Zeroizing and rolling totals. The income statement tells the story of your company's financial performance over a specific accounting period. This report shows how much money is coming in, its revenue, how much is going out, its expenses, and what the resulting profit or loss is, which is calculated by summing the revenue and the expenses. Often, the income statement shows the following lines: the subtotal of the revenue from all the revenue GL accounts, the subtotal of the expenses from all the expense GL accounts, and the final total of the revenue subtotal and the expense subtotal, giving you the net profit or loss. So how do you define these lines when you're creating financial reports such as income statements? Let's say Penny has two buckets, a blue one which represents the subtotal lines on a report, and a red one which represents the final total line. The credit value of Penny's revenue from selling and distributing sweets accumulates in the blue bucket, and she obtains the subtotal of revenue. Before she can use the blue bucket to accumulate the expenses, she must empty it. At the same time, Penny wants to retain the revenue subtotal. So when emptying the revenue subtotal from the blue bucket, she moves it into the red bucket. Since the blue bucket is now empty, Penny can use it to accumulate the debit value of her expenses, rent, electricity and bills, and obtain the subtotal of the expenses. Again, Penny wants to retain the subtotal for the expenses, so she empties the expenses subtotal from the blue bucket into the red bucket. The red bucket now contains the value of the revenue subtotal and the value of the expenses subtotal, which generates the net profit or loss value of Penny's business. The blue bucket is empty and can be reused to accumulate more subtotals if necessary. This can be applied when using Syspro's financial report writer. You can define a total line type to print subtotals and total values that you have accumulated using account lines. The Zeroize total option is like emptying the blue bucket for reuse. You use this option to reset the selected subtotal level to 0 when you want to reuse a subtotal level in the same report. The roll total option is like moving the contents of the blue bucket into the red bucket to retain the value you obtained, but also make the blue bucket available for accumulation again. You use this option to add the selected subtotal level to a higher total level, the final total, when you want to retain a subtotal which you had accumulated, but also want to use the current subtotal level for other purposes. Therefore, you use both the Zeroize total and roll total options to define subtotal or blue bucket lines on the report, and only the Zeroize total option for the total or red bucket line. Next time you're defining total lines on a financial report, picture the blue and red buckets, which represent the blue subtotal and red final total lines on the report. It should make the task of creating the report a little easier.